Welcome back to hell. Today I'm going to be reviewing Oppenheimer, and my girlfriend saw Barbie, so no one else has to. So, yeah, stick around. And we'll be starting with Barbie, so take it away.
Hi, everyone. I hope you all are doing well. It's a pleasure that I finally get to be a guest on your podcast. It's very exciting. But yeah, I saw Barbie, so you didn't have to. I have a lot of things to say about this film, particularly how it was very, how do I put this? You know, let me put it this way, I'll start from the beginning. When I was outside of that theater and I saw the preview picture, it said, she's Barbie, he's just Ken. So I thought to myself, okay, this is going to be like a very feminine movie, kind of like Legally Blonde, Mean Girls, Clueless, etc. So when I went in there, I was expecting that specifically. And it was not like that in any way, shape, or form. At the beginning, there was hints of it, but it was Barbie. It was a very like stereotypical wonderland of Barbie. It kind of almost reminded me of the movie Enchanted, because there's the princess, then she goes into the real world, kind of like how Barbie went into the real world, so to speak. So whenever I saw that, I was like, okay, that's that. And then we get to meet Ken. Now the thing about Ken is he does beach. for the for you guys that have watched Barbie, you know that reference. But yeah,
He will beat you off.
yeah, he. Sorry, that was funny. He he's on the beach and he just kind of watches Barbie. His goal is to kind of be with Barbie. Like that is his meaning of life. But as we get to know Ken throughout this film, we realize that there's more to than just being Ken and taking care of Barbie. It is to be yourself and to be authentically yourself, to not lead up to societal expectations or lead up to a person that you love the most. You cannot give every single bit and piece of your being just to provide and make somebody happy. That's not how it should work. So, long story short, I believe that Ken, because he has the brain of I'm just here to provide for Barbie, um, he's a people pleaser, 100%. So that's how I saw Ken. But then as the movie progressed, he like dramatically changed and he became extremely masculine because when him and Barbie went into the real world, he learned about masculinity and he learned about like trucks and like cars and that sort of thing, and he was very like, yeah, let's bring us back into Barbie land. So he
So he
brought,
kind of soaked in the stereotypes
yeah, oh,
surrounding that.
100%. Yeah, he and then whenever they went back to Barbie land, um Barbie was brought back differently. She ran away from the corporation that makes the Barbie dolls. Whereas Ken, he just went back the way that they were supposed to go back, which is like through this weird pattern of like swim through the ocean, go through this rocket ship, go on this car, ride a rollerblade. You see that throughout the film if you have seen all the details in there. But yeah, that's how Ken got back. And then when he got back, he like told all the Kens in Barbie Land, he was like, we're gonna make this happen. I saw this, I saw this, I saw this. And then it became Ken Dumb or Ken Land. I can't remember off the top of my head. But it became a very masculine land. And the thing that I realized about this movie was that anything that happened in Barbie Land, it echoed to the real world. So, for example, when Barbie was like having breakdowns about the real world, they made like depression Barbies, which I thought was the funniest thing.
Wow.
Yeah, they made like they made like introducing anxiety and depression Barbie.
I would like to plug an ad for all of you depressed housewives out there. There is now Depressed Barbie stocked on shelves everywhere. Be advised and scoop as many as possible. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that was probably one of my favorite parts of that whole movie was the depressed Barbie. But anyway, sidetrack. Um
Retailing at $24.99.
and then whenever they turned it into Ken Land, everybody was buying Ken dolls in the real world. So it was like an echo off of that. So Barbie gets back to Barbie Land and she sees the whole thing become like extremely masculine. And she's like, what? So she knows about the real world because, plot speaking.
She's been there.
Plot speaking, she goes into the real world because whoever is using her as the Barbie doll, they're not in the best place mentally. So she goes into the real world to find the owner, and she figures out who the person is. But I don't want to necessarily spoil it, um, if that's okay.
You can go as in depth as you need to, or want to. I usually tend to put things out like a little while after they've come out, so people have time to see them,
Yeah.
and so that I'm not likely spoiling stuff. So you can go ahead and say whatever you want
All
about the
right.
movie.
Well, then, this will be spoiler warning disclaimer. She meets the owner, and it turns out she thought it was a little girl who was in middle school who is very, very angsty, and she firmly believes that what she firmly believes that the company that makes Barbie is fascist, and it's also very like sexist. It's extremely sexist, and she was saying stuff like that. Because that Barbie was made for women and how they made the brand messaging based on how women should be, she believes that that's like extremely sexist. She believes that like women should be more open and should be more obligated to do whatever they want. But Barbie couldn't understand it. She was like, I don't understand. I think that's what we're doing. And that's what I'm doing for you. But she was like, go away. Da, 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 da. So just, being an angsty teenager. But then she finds out that it's not actually the girl, it's the girl's mother, because the girl's mother is having a hard time trying to raise her daughter, trying to make her happy, etc., etc.
Mm.
So that's what Barbie realizes, and she becomes sad. She feels pain for the girl, she feels pain for the mother, and throughout the film, she gets to realize like um, how hurt this mother is. And the thing about Barbie is that because it's Barbie land, they don't feel pain necessarily. They feel more like happy go lucky, sunshine and rainbows, unicorns and stuff like that. Like it's very like innocent. It's
Yeah, it's
all
kind of like
innocent.
Toy Story.
It's very Toy
Like
Story.
they don't feel pain unless it's something very serious, like a lava furnace or a truck about to smash them. But when they're beating each other up or falling off of shelves, they don't
Right?
seem to feel much like pain unless they properly break. Like Woody's arms were ripping the whole series, and he never really
Hmm.
actually seemed like he lost function. So
Which, speaking of that, Toy Story 3 scared the crap out of me. Like, I was like sitting there and I'm like, they're going to die.
we're gonna review the entire Toy Story series as one bundle
Yes,
at
let's
some
do
point.
it.
But yeah, going on with Barbie then, so she realizes that like the mother is kind of depressed and in a
Oh,
bad spot.
extremely
Retailing at
depressed.
$24.99, by the way. If you're
Yes.
depressed, grab a depressed Barbie.
Yes.
Okay, so you have a friend.
Also, fun fact about the mother: the mother is actually, I believe, the secretary for the Barbie franchise. And then throughout the film, Barbie gets to know the franchise, and she gets to meet the CEO, which is Will Ferrell. Now, when I first saw that part, I went, "Oh, you got to be kidding me!" Because a lot of women brands, they're owned by men, which I think, in my opinion, is a little like, if you're gonna sell women products, maybe a woman should own it. But that's just my opinion. So when I saw that, I was like, you gotta be joking. Like, this is stupid. So it kind of further proves that stereotypical, like, men own everything and women are getting paid less or women are a little lower, that type of thing. Like, that's what went through my head. But then as I got to know the CEO of Barbie, I realized that he's really trying and he actually has a good heart. So I gave him,
Does he have daughters, or does he mention having kids at all?
not that I know of, I don't
'Cause-
think he mentioned it, but he did say that he like has a big passion to provide for people that buy Barbie dolls. Like he wants to help girls that want to be themselves.
yeah. So
And
then
he
I
even
mean,
like addressed it in a sense of um like, oh yeah, I want to help them, but like not in a creepy way. Like
yeah.
he even said that in the film, I think. So I was like, oh, that's
That's
okay.
funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would assume that, like, in a lot of cases, a lot of these movies, for example, Saving Mr. Banks, Tom Hanks played Walt Disney, and Disney kept trying to get the author of Mary Poppins to let him make a Mary Poppins movie because he said, like, my daughters are this, my daughters are that. Like, they want to see her. They kept begging me to do it, so I made a promise to my daughter. So don't make me break that promise. Like, give me your character to make a movie out of.
Right?
So I'm surprised actually he didn't say, like, my daughter, loves
No,
Barbie, or I do it for her.
he didn't say anything about that. He just said like it's more okay. Y'all have seen Elf, of course. Like that's an American Christmas classic. Like everybody loves Elf.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of had that similar attitude in Barbie, but he was way more businesslike.
So he was kind of like what would happen if Buddy
If Buddy
had
wasn't,
had the traits of his New York businessman dad,
yeah,
and
and wasn't a piece of shit.
spent less time in the North Pole.
Yeah.
Basically. Okay.
Yeah, he was kind of like that because he had this like innocence about him, and you could tell he was like very passionate about what he did. It's just at first he was kind of hard to read, um, and because he's the CEO, that's what made me have difficulty to understand him. But as the movie went further, he actually was kind of really funny, and he became one of my favorite characters because of it. Um, so yeah, but they find out that Barbie is Barbie because they thought it was just a random girl, obviously. And throughout society, which I will get to in a minute, they are like, oh my God, no, wait, that's Barbie. She went to the real world somehow. And Barbie's just like, I'm just here to help whoever is in trouble and I'm here to just provide. But she also doesn't really know how the real world works yet. Like, she's still very confused. So they kind of like try to like tell her to, you can go back. And what they do is they try to put her in a Barbie box, but then she realizes like, oh wait, they might be trapping me, so she runs away. Then she meets this woman named I forget her name, but we'll get to her later. She is an older lady sitting in a kitchen, and she's like, hey Barbie. And then she kind of tells her like where to go, and she's like, oh, all right, sounds good. And then they just have this little interaction. But then I realized at the end of the film that specific old lady was the OG owner of Barbie. She was the person that made Barbie, she was the person that founded it, and then she got into some legal trouble, if I remember correctly. Yeah, her name is Ruth. I remember it's Ruth.
Oh, oh.
Who was it? Yes, yeah, it's Ruth Handler. So she was portrayed very, very symbolic throughout this whole film. And you don't really realize it until near the end, but we'll get to her later. So basically, that interaction between Ruth and Barbie becomes very pinnacle throughout the film. And then Barbie gets back and then she discovers Kenland. Now, I got sidetracked there because obviously I want to tell you Barbie's timeline first. And then when Ken gets back, it becomes Kenland or Kendom, whatever you want to call it. So when Barbie returns back to Barbie Land, it becomes a masculine shit show. It's like all the women are dressed up as waitresses, serving beer to the Ken dolls. The Ken dolls are having Mojo Dojo Casa houses, as everybody says. And Ken is just kind of like, he's kind of like a Jake Paul of sorts. Like, he's very like, yeah, this is my Mojo Dojo Casa house, which becomes, he takes over Barbie's house. Now, the thing I'd like to make a note of in this film is that because when it was Barbie Land was very feminine, and all the girls, they had girls' nights, they had dance parties, and Barbie, her house was like the hot spot. Like, all the girls would dance there, and that's where the dance the night away, like that song came in. So whenever Ken would go hang out with Barbie, he would try to like raise her up and make a move on her, saying like, hey, let's have like a sleepover. And one of the funny parts she says was, and do what? And he goes, I don't know. Because they're dolls. They can't form like non-innocent things. Like they're virgins. They're not how do I put this? They're just innocent people. They can't think like humans can. So I just thought that was a little bit funny to me. But yeah, long story short, Barbie was like, well, I have a girls' night. You can't really come over. Sorry. So when she comes back and then she sees her Mojo Dojo Casa house instead of Barbie house, he takes over and he kind of gives a taste of her own medicine and is like, hey, my house now, and I'm having a guys' night. And all the guys are like hanging out, they're drinking beer, they're watching on the TV like horses and like trucks and all that stuff. And I'm like, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. And I was thinking to myself, you know what? Barbie Loki kind of deserved it. But I think both parties, you kind of see a theme here. It's like you see the extremely feminine side and then you see a extremely masculine side. So that kind of plays out. Now, one thing I loved about this film was the fact that we really, really got to see how females have a harder time trying to adjust to society, specifically when Barbie first enters into the world. Because when her and Ken go into the real world, Barbie originally was supposed to go by herself, but Ken decided to come with her because obviously, as his objective is, it's to take care of Barbie. So he goes along with her, and they end up, one of their objectives that they have to do is to wear rollerblades. And so they enter into this world with rollerblades on, and Barbie has this very, very flashy outfit. It's like multicolored one piece bathing suit. She has like green tights, and all of these like men are like catcalling her and like giving her attention and that sort of thing. And I was like, this is gonna be awkward. And then at some point, she tries to figure out like where her owner is. And one of the things that caught my attention was she went up to these group of carpenters and they were all like saying really, really like nasty things to her, but like what they want to do to her and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, that's gross. And they were saying something sexually oriented. And she goes, well, I don't have any genitals. And they were like, and the guys kind of paused and they went, that's okay. That's okay. And then Ken looks at them and he goes, I have all the genitals.
Ken is not like other guys.
No, not at all.
Ken is just really not like other girls or guys.
And no, not at all. So anyway, yeah, that's what happened on that. So I forgot to make a side note of that or just a topic about that, but I just thought that was important to me. And then, yeah, so throughout the movie, as it becomes Kenland and Barbie gets to meet her owner, the owner actually goes to Barbie Land with her daughter, and they go to Barbie Land to kind of save Kendom. And one of the things that they try to do is they try to be, I think personally, this is kind of manipulative in my opinion, but this is how girls do it best. The Barbie dolls, they try to like, they group together, but first things first, the daughter, the mother, and Barbie, they try to get the other Barbies to be normal again because they're somehow like fixated about like being waitresses and like serving the men, but not serving themselves. So it's very sexist. So what the mother does is that she tries to like get them all geared and be like, hey, men ain't shit, we're gonna fix this, and they say all these like things that are like, why are women supposed to do this when men can do that? And they say all these different things, and then the Barbies, they become normal again. And then what ends up happening is they go back to normal, and then they decide, okay, let's manipulate the Kens because they go to war with each other, and then we'll get our kingdom back. So eventually they did. And how they did it was the Kens would like serenade them with a song or they would like riz them up. And then they'll be like, oh, I'll be right back. And then they end up with another Ken. So they make them hate each other. And I'm like, that's really manipulative, but I think that's also kind of genius because like that's how women do it. That's what we do, in those aspects if it has to be necessary. So I just thought that was cool.
It's a good thing that they planned it out because what usually happens there is that women couldn't care less about a dude, and then as soon as another woman even notices he exists, suddenly she does find interest in him.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as another one. So it's a good thing they planned it out and they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they would have torn each other apart.
Yep, I agree. I agree. Oh, and another thing about Barbie that I absolutely love that I forgot to mention, so I apologize to the people that are like, when is she going to say this? There is a person named Weird Barbie. there's different types of Barbies throughout this movie. There's stereotypical Barbie, which is our main character. Then there is Weird Barbie. Weird Barbie is like those Barbie dolls that you play with a little too hard and you draw like markers on them and you like just throw them in your room and stuff like that. That's Weird Barbie. Weird Barbie kind of founded the whole thing together almost, in a sense where she like notices all the patterns going throughout Barbie land and she tries to like help Barbie go to the real world because Barbie has flat feet, whereas in Barbie land they're not like that. They always wear high heels, they're always wearing dresses, they're always like just super cutesy feminine stuff. So, Weird Barbie kind of tied the whole thing together, honestly, and also got back Barbie land. So that kind of helps that and sums it up. But I absolutely loved Weird Barbie. I thought she was really cool, and I was that girl that played with my Barbie dolls and would literally like throw them in the room and like put like Sharpies on it and stuff like that. But yeah, so we get to the main part of this movie. So when the whole thing becomes back to normal, as the Kens are fighting against each other, we have this beautiful masterpiece called I'm Just Ken. And Ken, our main Ken, does this beautiful number. And me and my sister, when we saw this film, we were laughing so hard in that theater. And especially the part where it goes like, can you feel the Kenergy? Like, it was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Um, and he really just shows like what he wants to be instead of just helping Barbie. Because he says like anywhere else I'd be a 10, but then she goes, when I see love she sees a friend. Like it's really really hot, it's really really tough.
Here's the thing. Poor Ken.
Right.
Poor Ken.
I know, I felt for him the whole time.
The dude's just trying. He's just trying everything and nothing's working.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a bummer, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I felt bad for him. Anyways, so then when they get back to Barbie Land, the mother and the daughter, or the owners, that have this Barbie, the main character Barbie, they are kind of sort of happy again, and they decide to go back to the real world, and then they fix all of it. Now, this is where I started to get emotional because near the end of the film, um, Barbie kind of wants to figure out herself. And she wants to figure out like who she is than just being Barbie, you know? And she tries to tell that to Ken as well because she confesses that she just doesn't have feelings for him. She just sees him as a friend. And Ken hilariously tries to do that like toxic masculinity where they like just don't cry, but like you can tell like he's about to cry, but he's like, I'm good. I'm good. Like, but
There are two, amazing people in this film. Um, Hollywood, they get their best, and they get the most beautiful, amazing actor in the world. And then they also are able to score Margot Robbie in the same movie. And it's like that's a feat in and of itself. And I think it's just wonderful that they were able to get both. And I'm very proud of Warner Brothers for pulling that off because their institution is
oh my
sinking.
god.
They're not paying their writers.
They're not at all.
They have flop after flop, but at least for their one successful movie the past few years, they managed to get the best and most attractive actor in the world, and they even let him have Margot Robbie as a sidekick. So that's just
Oh my
it's
god.
great. I'm glad they were able to do that. Anyways, proceed with the
I
finish.
I kind of sort of disagree. I think Margot Robbie was the perfect choice for Barbie.
No, I think that Ryan Gosling is way more beautiful than Margot Robbie. So it's just the cold hard truth.
You know what? That's okay. You guys are all Knuff. We're all Knuff for Ken. Anyways, so we
You are
get
Knuff.
you are Knuff. So we get to the end. Now she tells Ken like it's okay.
It's not you, it's me.
No, it's not even that. She just said you cannot be Ken to help me. You need to figure out yourself. Like, you need to be yourself.
Power within.
Yeah, the power within, right? And he kind of realizes that. And he's like, oh, okay. So then we head back to Ruth. The CEO of Barbie, the one that plays by Will Ferrell, he comes back into Barbie and he's like trying to figure out like what this whole mess is and all that stuff. And then Barbie kind of just concludes like, I want to be myself. I'm going to figure myself out. And Ken's going to figure himself out. And then she just kind of like tries to figure out like why she has this purpose of being Barbie. And then we finally get to know that Ruth was the inventor of Barbie because Ruth enters Barbie land and she tells Barbie like, I made you. I made this image to be a good place for women to be themselves. And then her and Barbie, they walk into a room, and this is where I completely lost it. Um, Ruth like tells Barbie all these things that you need to feel life, you need to feel the way that life is meant to be, which is messy, chaotic, but also beautiful, and also experience the way that Barbie was meant to be experienced, which was motherhood to daughter. And then the cycle continues. It's motherhood, daughter, motherhood, daughter. And then this montage starts of, moms with their daughters, like to newborn to teenager to the daughter becoming a mother and then to their daughter. And it just sort of like echoes this pattern. And that part necessarily didn't make me cry, but I can understand why people would get emotional over it. But what made me emotional
was when Ken was off for the rode off in the sunset. Oh,
yes.
sorry,
No, you're that was great. What made me emotional was the feeling of how life can be so messy and so hard, but yet it can be so like precious at the same time. And I felt like that's what went through Barbie's head in this film, and I just really thought that that was very captivating. And that's when I lost it in the theater. And then at the end of the movie, my sister found me crying and she was like, I got you in 4K. And then she recorded me and she sent it all to my friends. And I was like, okay, yes, that's great. Um, yeah. So
and they have that depressing song in the credits.
It's a really good song though.
I know, it's so depressing.
I love What Was I Made For.
There's
I think it was a beautifully written song
There's
though.
nothing redeeming about it.
I know it's not redeeming, but it's meant to be depressing. It's meant to be sad.
I don't know. I'm not a fan of songs that basically just say, hey, you know what? Just jump off that bridge. That's all you can do.
Well, sometimes people can have a crisis, and that's okay.
Keep it in the recording studio.
Yeah, but anyway, then one more thing I'll say before I leave the floor to Oppenheimer. I loved how Barbie was not a feminine movie, but it was more of an equality movie. The reason why I say this is because at the end of the movie, the narrator, who has been narrating throughout the film, says, hopefully we can find a society where men and women can, she didn't say equally help each other, but she said we can help each other in the same circumstance or something like that. And I was like, that is exactly how I feel about today. Like, I wish that men and women would just treat each other respectfully. That's exactly how I feel about life. That's how I feel about the way I see life, whether that's politics, sociology, and just life in general. Just that's just the way I see it. And the fact that Barbie like captivated that and took that back, it blew my mind personally, and that's one of the reasons why I think it was a great film. But yeah, I loved Barbie. It was a great film. I would definitely go watch it again. And I'm sorry if I missed any important parts, but that's the best way I can say it because I've only seen this film once. But I would definitely see it again.
Scale 1 to 5, what would you rate it?
1 to 5, I would say a 4. There was some things in the movie that I wish it could have been more explained, such as like how the fuck did Ruth get into Barbie Land? There was also some like
She's their god. She can go
right, but like I wish they could have.
before me.
I wish they could have been like, how or like how did she do that?
She obviously got on the rollerblades, got on the rocket ship. It was just off screen.
She followed the formula.
Yeah,
I guess that makes sense, but
there's a formula. She created the formula.
she did. She did though. That's
So
true.
she
So
knows what she's doing.
I guess that's erased. But another thing too, and I know that this is kind of stupid, but the other reason why I say a 4 is because the soundtrack. I love the Barbie soundtrack, but I do not like Lizzo in any way, shape, or form.
You didn't have to go there.
Why? I can say that if I want. You all know.
I have very heavy feelings for Lizzo. She's weighs very heavily on my consciousness, and it really drags me down.
It just.
The feeling's kind of crushing. You know, it's like smothering.
Oh my god.
It's almost like there's too many layers of it, and I just can't like get.
I just. Sorry. Well, anyway. The soundtrack and the movie came out right when Lizzo had those allegations. So I was like, that couldn't have been worse timing, in my opinion. Like, that was like bad. But yeah. And I just wish she didn't do like the main parts. Like the main song for Barbie and the one where it goes like, P, I'm panic. I'm scared. I wish that couldn't have been her. It should have been somebody else. But other than that, the film was great. I loved it. So sorry that I talked so much, guys, but now I will give the floor for Oppenheimer, which,
How
holy
fast
crap.
Do you think Lizzo can run the 40-yard dash if a zombie's chasing her?
0.5. 0.5 miles per hour. And she'll go, am I ready? Am I ready?
We're gonna have some outtakes in this one. All right.
It's Oppenheimer time.
All right, get your Riz on.
Rizenheimer.
Get ready for the Schwappenheimer. Christopher Nolan pretty easily did it again. There it is. That's the tweet. So Oppenheimer was definitely the movie of the year so far. It's my number one. Taking the spot away from John Wick. It was thoroughly perfect. I was able to travel and see it in a giant 70 millimeter film and completely immersive. There's almost no better way to watch a movie. And the way that it was shot was just ingenious because you have two different perspectives. You have the black and white and you have the color. And with the color shots, it was all from Oppenheimer's perspective. And the camera would be like over his shoulder or very close to his face. It was very personal with him. And everything that he would notice and see or feel would be obvious in a scene because it would be color and the camera would be very up in his business. And then he had a lot of moments too where most of his emotion that was conveyed was straight into an IMAX camera over the color scenes with a close up on his face, which looks great in like 70 feet tall on that screen, by the way.
Yeah, I agree.
But and then the black and white footage was mostly like anybody else seeing Oppenheimer and how they saw him. So Louis Strauss, the Robert Downey Jr.'s character, would see black and white infomercials. Basically, you see this horrible reality where Oppenheimer's like poisoning scientists against him and stuff, and then the color would usually bring in more context to those interactions. And let's just go through some of the characters. The cast was amazing. I've never wanted to be a door before, but after seeing Emily Blunt slam one repeatedly, I would love to be a door. She was incredible.
Guys, you have no idea how many times you've told me that.
I didn't ask you.
Mm-hmm.
Cillian Murphy was amazing. His eyes were perfectly conveying like absolute excitement, interest, wonder, and dread all in one, and fear, but also righteousness in some cases. And it was very intense and fun to see. There was no Michael Caine in a Christopher Nolan movie, which kind of worried me. But Einstein stole the show easily. There's one scene where he literally appears like Batman. A car drives away and he walks up out of the shadows and starts talking. That was absolutely wonderful. So I think Einstein was probably the biggest reason to go see the film. But most of it centered around the actual creation and detonation of the atomic bomb and the fallout from its creation, and the U.S. having some of the first major usable atomic weapons, beating what the Germans to it as they thought, and then beating the Russians to it, thanks mostly to Oppenheimer and his team at Los Alamos. And so the film was very interesting because they didn't directly show anything from the bombings, but it was heavily referenced and it was spoken about at great length. And you could really see how, from the people's perspective, having made it, the news coming back to them, kind of what it was and what it became, and how it split the group so badly, and how it led to such a complicated effect politically and militarily for the entire world. And it was very interesting to see a modern perspective on the events, but also getting a fair shake of what most of the people at the time were probably thinking and feeling, and how they were going through the whole process. Because there's a lot of hindsight that you can apply to it, but there's only so much that you would have actually known for sure at the time, such as the chances of actually blowing up the entire Earth with one detonation near zero
Yeah.
might burn up the entire atmosphere. Those were some questions that were raised. Matt Damon was also great. Um, there were too many people to list, but I know a lot of people went for Florence Pugh. Um,
Oh dear. Yeah.
but it
Thank
was
you.
it was a wonderful cast, and it was a lot of fun to watch, and it didn't get tiring. It was 3 hours long, but it felt like two, and it was just completely devastating. You see all this beauty and all these wonderful things, and like the wonder of science, and then you see like what it can do as well, and what it can turn into, and what one stupid, callous oaf in the Oval Office can do with weapons of mass destruction is pretty horrifying, as Gary Oldman showed us. So that was a really enlightening scene, if for people who wouldn't already have guessed that. So
Mhm.
for most people, it was just like, oh yeah, that sounds like the U.S. government, happily dropping bombs to make people happy in other places. Everybody smile. So it was very tense, and the whole thing was really tied together by the soundtrack, because I think it was the most beautiful part, and but it also felt like an energetic part of the film. They kind of took from the Hans Zimmer playbook of what he's doing with Dune, where he's kind of making his music like slide into the film, where parts of his music actually become used in the film like props. So the big horns, when or the I think Arrakis, when the Arrakis clan is moving into the,
Yes.
yeah. So he's
It was the landing part of Arrakis. I
there's a whole
think. Yeah.
ceremony. Yeah, they were all yelling, "The Messiah!"
Mhm.
They were going Life of Brian on poor Timothy. So
Paul Atreides. Yeah.
yeah, but the House of Atreides was landing, and then the horns you hear are actually from the soundtrack, and they were in the music. And so this film was pretty similar. They used only the violin, but they used it in such a wide range that it felt like you had a bunch of different instruments wrapped up into it. And he would have these genius scales where you would start with a high note violin and a low note, and then they would eventually meet in the middle as they're scaling up and down, respectively. So it was very, um, wonderful to listen to, especially with the IMAX and all the beautiful giant shots covering the entire screen, the whole wall basically. It was very immersive, and I was only a few rows back from the front, so I really got a big, massive view. And yeah, the way that it was shot though was just incredible. I can't believe I saw this on a smaller screen, and I can't believe that to watch it again, I'll have to see it on a smaller screen. And it'll be a big shame when I do because it just looks so beautiful in the 70 millimeter IMAX presentation. It was just too wonderful. And I could see it probably 3 or 4 times in that format before I would get tired of it. It was amazing. And the ending was a very stark and realistic and familiar tale for most people who know more about the way the game is played than the average person, um, and the what went on behind closed doors to assure the reputational destruction of Oppenheimer at the time, back when Strauss was trying to get onto Eisenhower's cabinet. So it was very obvious. You saw Strauss planting articles in Time magazine because he's friends with the editor, to boost himself. You saw him trying to get the witness list tons of times, trying to have an influence over the testimony there, and just desperate to have the country believe what he wants them to believe about Oppenheimer so that he can consolidate more power. And yeah, he had paranoid delusions about Oppenheimer turning Einstein and scientists against him. And he was very stilted by Oppenheimer's mocking during a few years earlier. They had a hearing on isotopes, and Strauss got embarrassed by Oppenheimer, so he never forgave him. And all of those kind of just snowball into a perfect storm of subterfuge and hatred and bullshit. And you just see how things really do happen when certain people in Washington want power and want to use it at the expense of everyone and anyone else. Um, and they name drop Kennedy. One of the first people who voted against Strauss's appointment was Senator from Massachusetts, John F. Kennedy.
Mm-hmm.
um, so I'm low key kind of hoping Nolan tackles JFK in his next movie. That would be an amazing film. Imagine that in IMAX. Like Oliver Stone did it in '91, but that was off of the information of the day. Now we now have a ton more declassified documents surrounding the case. It'd be really interesting to see it revisited, especially by someone with the caliber of Nolan and just the technical skill. And he's also the only guy that gets the IMAX cameras rented out for an entire film. Nobody else really gets those, so that would be stunning to see. But the story was amazing. It encapsulated the book pretty perfectly. American Prometheus. I can't recommend it enough. But if anyone wants to see an abridged version, this film is easily a 5 out of 5. Movie of the year. I will not be shocked if it scoops up a bunch of award season trophies next winter.
Yeah.
There really just aren't many people providing films at this caliber. Like besides probably Ridley Scott, um, Martin Scorsese, a very short list. And Nolan was voted like the best director of the past 25 years, and I think he earned it because he never misses. Pretty much never misses. Um, some of my favorite ones from him were their Prestige. That was amazing. Everybody loves the Dark Knight trilogy. He absolutely knocked Interstellar out of the park. It's the most beautiful movie I've ever seen, technically speaking. Yeah, so it's just another one in the holster, and I'm only excited to see what he does next. Um, how he writes his scripts next because he switched up to a personal style in this one. He instead of using stage directions, he was using personal directions. Like he wrote it in first person because he really wanted to get into the mindset of this being a story from Oppenheimer's perspective and him as if he was narrating it. And he said that it actually unlocked better ways for him to shoot his scripts, because now people don't skip over the technical directions part. He actually really makes you want to read the entirety of the script so that you feel like you're not missing anything, any of the dialogue or anything that Oppenheimer's like thinking or saying. So I thought that was very cool. Um, yeah, there's really nothing I could have asked from this film more than what it gave, and he keeps just pushing the boundaries of what's possible with filmmaking, film scores, and with the IMAX projection and the shooting. So I thought it was incredible.
I think Oppenheimer was like, I saw Oppenheimer too. I was lucky enough to go with you to the IMAX theater, and oh my god, it was so beautiful. That whole film was just incredible. What he said and all those words combined is just great. But I just wanted to say this because I thought this the whole time when I saw the movie. The one thing that I absolutely adored about Oppenheimer was the fact that any time that something catastrophic happened or anything that shifted, it was like silent. For example, the explosion. It was quiet, but of course that's just because the light goes first and it's the noise. But I also thought it was really important because when it was like silent, it went to all the perspectives. It was like Oppenheimer, and then it was the scientists, and then it was like the government, and then like so on and so
Yeah, they
forth.
showed every single person's face. You got to see every single person's reaction to
Yes.
the actual ignition, and then you got their reaction when the sound wave hit them and when the force of it was really heard.
Which, holy crap, I was so. I mean, like I'm saying this in literal terms, but I was blown away. Like
You
I
actually jumped almost out of your
I
seat.
did,
It got you.
because well, what's funny is when I saw Barbie, um, Oppenheimer was playing in the other room, and I could hear the explosion. Like that's how loud it was. So when I went to go see this with you, I went, "Oh no, this is gonna be really loud." Like I was like, "I better prep myself," and then
Surprisingly, though, it wasn't
it
that
just
loud.
happened. Yeah.
It wasn't as loud as I thought it would be. I literally went in there thinking I'm probably going to need ear muffs or earplugs, but it was actually a perfect volume. I never needed anything.
Hmm.
Like it was never too loud for me. I don't know about you, but
I thought it was really loud, but not because of the sound. It was more like the jolt. It
yeah,
was
the
like that.
suddenness.
It was the sudden unexpectation of like boom, and then it just went off, which is crazy. But the one thing too was the fact that after the explosion happened, when Oppenheimer gave that little conference and everybody was like clapping for him, and they were like, "We did it! We made an atomic weapon!"
Yes,
You
like
know, we're
stomping their feet
yeah, they were like
and
stomping
they were
feet
making the
stuff.
same chain reaction that you see through the whole film because in the very beginning you see him looking at raindrops hitting pond and the ripples in the pond.
Hmm.
You see like crackles of light. He keeps cutting away to those what he's seeing in his head, and he's staring at a pond with Einstein watching the ripples there too. And you
Hmm.
hear noises. The violins are constantly making like a quick reverberating noise in many of the songs, and
Yeah,
then they're stomping their feet. So they
staccato.
keep showing chain reactions and um, the shaky, unstable nature of the atomic setup. It's like you can feel atoms like pulsating. It's really cool.
Yeah, throughout the film, you could see montages of atoms moving and then the universe moving. But I think that's what captivated Oppenheimer in his mind. It was because it was like that abstract, and it was
Yeah,
that he was like that
their
smart.
feet were like a trigger for
Yeah.
that though. So when they're stomping, they're making the same noises. It's kind of like the noise he's been hearing in his head. So then he's actually in sync with it. So
Yeah,
then he
for
stops
sure.
hearing it because if it was jarring to him, it would have been like a different kind of sound. But because they were stomping to the exact beat of what he's been hearing in his head for years anyway, he literally just kind of tunes them out, and you only hear him, saying his speech, and then you see them standing, but you don't hear them cheering or anything or clapping. All you hear is like seats being pushed as they stand up,
Yeah.
and then he hears the boom of them towards the end of that speech, as he's leaving the room, and he like hallucinates that he steps into a charred dead body, and he sees
Yeah.
bodies being blown by his bomb. Like he's just
Yeah,
it's
when
like traumatic for him.
that's what I was going to say, because that whole scene, like, my heart like just exploded. Like, I was just like, "Oh my god." Can you imagine being Oppenheimer, like making an atomic weapon, then realizing that the government's going to take it away from you and they're going to kill a bunch of people? Like, that's insane. Like, it
But
was
also
for
feeling the pressure, thinking if I don't do this, the Nazis will, and they'll bomb every
and they'll
single
bomb everybody.
country because they think that you're harboring Jews or whatever. They'll bomb everybody. So
Mm-hmm.
the
And
pressure
they
was
kept saying
immense.
Russia,
Yeah, yeah, and
Russia,
the Russians
Russia.
too.
But here's the thing though. At the time when World War II was occurring, Russia was allies.
Yeah, and they were
Um,
very reluctant allies on the U.S. front. And then, as soon as the war ended, throughout the 50s, Eisenhower and all the Republican administrations were in super war effort. They switched
yeah.
right over to attacking Russia and the
Well,
Red
it's because of
Scare and
the whole,
McCarthy and all that, the commie this, and
yeah,
it
and
just
the Iron Curtain thing and
yeah.
all
And
that
then
stuff. Yeah.
the military-industrial complex was desperate for another huge enemy to make people be afraid of, so that they can propagandize them and start a war and make money. Was Russia immediately the next biggest threat because they helped knock over Hitler. So suddenly he's like, "Oh, we got to go after them.
Yeah, it's like
Who's our
almost,
next target?"
it's like those political cartoons where, I don't know if any of you have seen this, but it's the one where Stalin and Hitler are like near each other and they have guns on their backs.
Yeah,
It was kind of like if you took Eisenhower and Stalin, it would still work, because I feel like that was their relationship, was like, okay, yeah, we're on the same side here, but let me have a gun on my back just in case, like, it was just kind of
yeah.
that.
We did not trust Russia
No, not
at
one
all.
bit. But
So, and then
anyway,
we moved
yeah.
to stab them in the back as soon as Germany fell, because then we knew the next biggest target is Russia.
Yes, for sure. Another thing too was the fact that because of the silence and when the seats went up and everything, that really like blew my mind. Then he started seeing like all these like dead bodies in his head. Then the part where he was put in that room and he saw all of like the pictures of Japan when it got hit, and I was like,
He couldn't even look up at the projection
no,
that
he
he was
couldn't.
showing. We weren't the camera never saw it, so the audience never gets to see it. But yeah, his group was shown the results of not just the bomb but also the radiation, and he
Yeah, and
couldn't
I've
even
seen
look
those
up at.
pictures. They're pretty fucking nasty.
Yeah, they're horrifying.
They're terrifying.
It's inhumane and completely insane that that ever happened.
Yeah, it just I the one that I remember, I don't know if you've seen this one. It's the one where like the kid, it's like a guy, he has a bike, but you can see the literal shape of it because of the explosion. It's so sad. Like it's crazy, but I mean, nonetheless, the film was amazing. I loved it. And I think the way that Christopher Nolan made this film was spectacular, and I will most likely go see it again for sure. You need to see Barbie now. You need to go see Barbie.
Is it Knuff?
It is Knuff.
All right,
You are Knuff.
I'll watch Barbie.
Awesome. Yay.
I got the gun behind my back. So, yeah, that pretty much sums up the thoughts, because if I should have an after hours episode where I just sit down and talk about why Oppenheimer is like the most perfect mirror reflection in many ways. um, why it should make you feel like the human race is mass suicidal. But yeah, that's
They like
depressing for the main episode. Somebody scrolling on Spotify listens to this and they're like, "Oh, great."
death. Well, maybe it's for the people that like the dark humor and they like
Humor. There's nothing humorous about it.
I know it's nothing
There's
humorous,
nothing funny about
but
that.
people like to do that as their way to cope, I guess.
I mean, like when you watch this film, you're basically going to watch it and then go, oh, so we're pretty much fucked, right? We're all fucked. Yeah. Okay. We're fucked now. Yeah. Like really, really fucked. So I'm probably going to cut that out. But anyway, I need a conclusion here. Something I can dig up.
Well,
A conclusion is
Barbenheimer.
yeah, Okay, we're gonna give you some Barbenheimer facts. This is how I'm gonna close out this episode with some amazing Barbenheimer trivia. Whatever. I love the internet. There we go. Barbenheimer trivia. This is a fire picture, by the way. Yes, there we go. What the hell? It's not even a thing I can do. Fucking hell. Test your real history knowledge. Barbenheimer quiz. Where's the quiz? Oh my god. Paywall quiz? Are you serious?
I will say the whole like marketing behind Barbenheimer was like 10 out of 10. Like they really knew what they were doing.
They saved the movies. Let's say that. Barbenheimer
I think
saved
so.
movies. Because
I
now people are kind of realizing that a 3 hour long biopic shot almost half in black and white can, without giant murder action sequences and stuff, can make about almost $1 billion. And it's R rated too. So the top two R rated movies in history are Joker and Oppenheimer.
yeah.
So it's trying to give Joker a run for its money. It probably won't catch up, but it'll get close, which is very interesting. So, I mean, if that can be successful, then there are a lot of things that could be successful that the stupid studios think are non-profitable.
Mm.
And then Barbie proves that people like going to the movies to see toys. So we need more Lego movies. Where are they? That's what I learned from that. Um, yeah. So I hope everyone has a safe, non-explosive Labor Day weekend. Cling to your loved ones while you can, into life, because we're probably all going to die soon. So
Sounds about right.
yeah. Fuck off. I'm done.
You guys are enough. Don't forget.